G'day, I am Mordechai Becher,
And I'm Yoshua Karsh.
and welcome to Two Rabbis and a Podcast. And in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about love, hate,
Hate,
and unity.
love, hate, and unity.
Yes. Now,
Not necessarily in that order.
not necessarily in that order, no, but we'd like to. I feel we both feel that promotion of Jewish unity is extremely important.
Yes.
Um, uh, the we know from many sources that when the Jewish people had unity, we were able to succeed and survive and overcome our enemies. And when we did not have unity, we were open to attack. We just witnessed the terrible disunity pre October 7th,
Yes.
which were thinking that it was even going to become a civil war.
Yes.
And that horrific attack, which created some level of unity, which has started to erode,
Brief.
to
Yeah.
say the least. A lot of erosion of that.
Yeah. By the way, I remember after the first Gulf War, um, the intense feeling of unity while the missiles were coming, etc. I remember listening to the radio, and it really, even on the radio, there was just like um, one heart beating. They had Uri Zohar on the radio. Like, I mean, they were it was just like a sense of one heart beating. And then afterwards, I remember being in a shir with Ramosha, and he said, "We're like a kli shavur. We can't hold it. It's just dripping out."
Broken
Yeah,
vessels.
right. It's the same, it's the same. It feels similar, hopefully not entirely, but it feels similar now that it just sort of is dripping out. I also just at the top of this wanted to mention that I would say 20 something years ago, I was working for the Chicago Community Kollel. I was their outreach director, and I began it was a beta testing of this idea. That the idea was called the One Jewish People Project. And the purpose of it was to have a group of people that are committed to be part of this group. And as a member of this group, you are working on your own project. So the project could be, and the projects are either building a bridge or repairing a breach. So you're either building a bridge to somebody you don't yet have a relationship with, or you're repairing a breach between you and somebody that you have a breach. In other words, there's already something difficult. So each person has their own projects. The purpose of the group is to be there as support for each person's project, to suggest things and to be a sounding board for what it is that you're thinking about doing. Some people might be trying to do something too big, and the wise advice would be take something smaller, start smaller, things like that. So we had two groups, one in West Rogers Park and one in Skokie. Each one went for several months, and I thought the idea had potential. So we were at a AJOP conference, you and I, and they had one
Wait.
session
For those who do
devoted.
not know, AJOP is the
Yes, sorry.
Association of Jewish Outreach Professionals,
Right.
where we used to have a conference once a year, usually in Baltimore.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And Mordechai and I used it as an opportunity to spend time with each other, besides everything else that was going on. But they had one program devoted to new programs, to if people were trying new programs and to share them with other people. So I shared this project. I don't know, maybe a 10-minute presentation. I shared the project. And then after I finished, there was like silence.
Yes, I remember that.
And yeah, and there were
Uncomfortable silence.
uncomfortable silence. And the few people that came over to talk to me about it were wondering, like, what is this, a fundraising project? Like, how exactly, what is this for? And I remember being frustrated. I know you were standing, I remember you were standing next to me one time
Yeah.
when I was just looking, going, what do you mean? What is this for? This is for it. Why does this need to be explained? We're building bridges and repairing breaches between people. We're creating achdus. But it was like it went nowhere. It was just like,
It's a great that is a great shame, and I distinctly remember that and how disappointing it was. Right. Um, anyway, so yeah, that would have been wonderful. Maybe we can institute it again. But
yeah,
so love, hate, and unity. Let's begin with the famous, of course, we know in Vayikra, Leviticus 19, Vayikra Yud, we have two statements, a prohibition and an obligation. The Torah says, Lo sisna es achicha bilvavecha. Don't hate your brother in your heart. And the Torah also says, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. Um, one's a negative commandment, one's a positive commandment. And so, type of interesting what exactly they mean. There's much discussion about that. Um, and the context of don't hate your brother in your heart is that verse says, don't hate your brother in your heart, rebuke your friend, and don't let him bear sin. Type of interesting. So the Rambam Maimonides says that when it says don't hate your brother in your heart, what it means, he says, what it means is this: if someone did something wrong to you, if someone hurt you, someone insulted you, whatever, he says, don't keep it in your heart and just to have an enmity and a hatred for them. What's the alternative? You should rebuke them. You should actually communicate. You should say, listen, I feel you did this to me. I feel hurt by X, Y, or Z. So he says either one, either the guy will say, no, that wasn't me, or he'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. And there'll be a prayer, or he'll say, go jump in the lake, right? But you're not worse off than you were,
we
right?
were we were actually talking about this before
Mm-hmm.
amongst ourselves, which is because I never thought of the following scenario uh, up until like a little bit before we were talking about it. But is it possible that when it says "Lo sisna sachicha bilvavecha," that sinna is not necessarily the most extreme form of hatred? But in other words, could it be that it means you're upset with somebody in a way that you're upset with them and causes you to look at them a little bit differently in what we would call being upset with another person as opposed to hating them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then because to me the idea of going up to somebody that I hate and rebuking them, that or rebuking them before it goes to hate, it just seems like those are going to be kind of extreme circumstances. But let's say I have a friend who does something and it just bothered me or it hurt me. Now they're actually my friend. I'm not moving to hate them right now. I I actually still love them, but I am feeling hurt, and I'm feeling the kind of hurt that, if it is fanned a little bit could get worse, but not yet. And there it would actually be a extremely important intervention before I go to a place of no return, a kind of hatred that it's very hard to come back from. So I never thought of it addressing the scenario where it's talking to me about my own friend who did something that hurts me.
It does say es amisecha, your
Yeah.
friend, right? And
Achicha.
the Rambam
Yeah.
seems to say that it's talking about where there was a negative interaction, there was some type of friction,
Yeah.
etc. Now, it's interesting because Reb Shlomo Fisher, Oliver Shalom,
All of us.
who we, Baruch Hashem, had opportunity to have contact with in Itri, we discussed him a while back. So in his Drushay Beis Yishai,
which is very hard to get
Very
right
hard
now.
to get.
But Mordechai has a few copies he's willing to
I have
sell.
one copy. I have one copy. But I bought a copy for a son and a son-in-law, so as well. So I have it. Yeah. So, in Drushbase Yishlai, one of the things he points out is that there's a Gemara in which I forgot who it was. One of the one of the Amoraim, it wants to test his son's respect for the parent. So he walks over to his son, who's wearing some new silk garment, and he basically rips it. No reason, just rips the garment. No, I walk over to you wearing a nice tie, and I take a scissors, right, etc. So the Gemara says, how can he do that? Isn't it lifnei? Isn't he placing a stumbling block before the blind? If his son gets angry at him, then he's transgressing honor your father and mother, and the father has caused that. So the Gemara says, demachile miyikara. He forgave him. So as a parent can forego their honor. You can say, "Don't stand up for me when I go into the room," and so he forgave him for that.
Mhm.
So then there's a question Rabbi Yisrael Salanter asks. That's all well and good for the prohibition of honor of parents, or the obligation to honor parents. So the parent can forego that and forgive him. So he hasn't transgressed. But he says, what about getting angry? Isn't it a sin to get angry? And the parents' mechila, the parents' forgiveness, is not going to help regarding the sin of getting angry.
Kol mine gehenim sholtim bo.
Exactly, quite serious. So Rav Shlomo Fisher answers that question. Rav Shlomo Fisher says, I don't think you've transgressed anything if you get angry in that situation, because it's a normal human emotion. Normal human reaction to someone coming over and cutting your silk tie for no apparent reason is, and you get angry, he says, you haven't transgressed anything. The
That's
Torah
the
doesn't
first.
expect.
You're talking about the first.
Exactly.
The
If I
first
take
thing.
revenge,
Right.
that's prohibition. If I bear
Right.
a grudge, that's a prohibition, right? But if I just say, "What the heck? What are you doing?" Right?
Right.
And I get angry, that's normal human emotion. That's not considered a sin. In the same way, the Sefer HaChinuch says that if someone gets in your face and insults you or slaps you, and you insult them back and slap them back, right? So you have not transgressed. Don't take vengeance. Los sikom. You have not transgressed vengeance. He says because it's impossible for a person to be a stone, she'ein lo hofchim, that can just kicked around. I mean, I don't know. Someone yells at me and right in my face, and I yell back at them. I have not transgressed the los sikom los sitor. B'shas ma'isa, if it's at that moment, right? Because that's not enough. It's not a sin to have normal human emotion. Someone comes over to me and says, Rabbi, that was a great class, and I feel good about that. Have I transgressed arrogance, pride? I don't know. If I start to think, maybe I am Mashiach. For
But
our
you're
viewers, I'm
so
not, because I'm a
again, all
lazy.
of these
Yeah.
are really your first burst. It's like a first response,
Normal human reaction. Yeah.
which is in other. It almost it happens before you're thinking. It's already out there, even really before you're thinking, especially when you're responding with a retort back. Oftentimes that's so quick. You don't even realize
Mhm.
it's going on, and it's happening before you think, or you hit somebody back who hit you or something. So I just was thinking maybe we need to distinguish between that first burst and then you've had some time to think and you've chosen to remain angry.
So that's where the Sefer HaChinuch and the Poskim says, Chafetz Chaim quotes it, is B'shas Maaseh, if it's at the moment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, but if you let it sink in and then act on it, or don't eradicate it, or deal with it, then it's a problem. Um, so that's anyway and it's interesting when it comes to love your neighbor as yourself. It's also a type of interesting because it's as we were discussing before. It's very difficult to command someone to love. Right? I don't know. You will love me, or I will. So the Ramban talks about it's. I mean, there's two ways of understanding it, but one idea is to act in such a way that you love someone. But the other thing he says is that you should
And you
want
act as somebody
who
who
loves.
loves somebody
Yeah.
towards them.
But he
Yeah.
also says that what it means is you should want your friend to have everything you have in honor, in riches, in wisdom, and so on and so forth. Not just what I have, but even more.
I have
So
two, I
that's
have
not
two,
love. That's like
right,
wanting my friend
right.
to
I
have
have two
everything I've
questions
got.
about that. I've always had
Yeah.
two questions about this from Bon. One is, does he say the same thing about loving Hashem? Is it impossible to to like when we say v'ahavta Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha,
Mhm.
it, does anybody think that that's asking too much with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might? Does anybody do the same thing with loving Hashem? Or is it mean, is the kamocha part, the part that he's saying is not possible?
I
Because
think they're
that's a profound love you're being asked to show to Hashem.
maybe it's easier to love Hashem than to love some guy who's annoying
Okay.
you.
Okay. I hear
Yeah,
that. I hear
maybe.
that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People, it's
Yeah.
it's it. Hashem's not in your face. You know,
Right.
I don't know if that's is that possible. It's a good question.
Right. The other question I had two questions. They were popped into my mind about this. He was saying that you act towards the other person as somebody who loves them. All right. I don't know. I lost it. I lost the other one, but I had two.
In any case, so now this creates a curious situation: prohibition against hatred.
Wait, one more. I remember now.
Go ahead. Go
Let's
ahead.
say in the V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha scenario, a, a mother for a child. Now, she would for sure give up her life. Many mothers would give up their life for their child. They could work three jobs so that their child could go to school, etc. I could hear is I could hear somebody responding to this, but my question is, isn't that an example of one human being loving another human being as themselves, or maybe even more than themselves?
Yeah, it is definitely. Yeah, I mean the Rav Shimon Shkop in the introduction to his book Shara Yoshar.
An amazing, surprising, to me, it was surprising,
Yes.
amazing,
Yeah.
amazing
Just
Hakdama.
Rav Shimon Shkop was a great Talmudic genius of last century.
Tells yeshiva,
And he
consider
wrote a
themselves.
book of Londas of very intense halachic deep discussion on the Talmud. But the introduction is a gem
Wow. Yeah,
of outlook and thought and just ideas about life and Judaism, etc. So one of
right.
the points he makes is that it's unreasonable to expect a person to love their neighbor as themselves.
Yes.
He says because there's an instinct of self-preservation and self-love. Right? That seems to be an instinct. And he says not only is it an instinct, but even halacha allows me to put myself first. If two people, the famous case, two people are in the desert, one of them loses his water.
Not just allows you, commands you.
Oh, commands you, yeah. Loses his water. I'm not supposed to share it. Rabbi Akiva said I should not share it with the other guy, my
If it's
water.
not enough for you.
There's not enough for me. Because chayecha koimin, my life comes first. My life comes first.
Yeah. But
So,
he goes on to say that you can work towards loving
oh,
other
of course.
people,
He
and you
says
could
by
work,
expanding
and in other
definition of
words,
self.
yes, that's how you do it. In other
Yes.
words, that's the process.
But
You you
that's
expand
apropos of the
yourself.
child.
That's what it means, kamocha, according to him.
Apropos of
Yeah.
the mother and the child, because
Oh,
when
I
you get
see. I
when
see
you
what you're
get
saying.
married, you get
Yeah.
married,
Yeah.
your wife and you are one.
Right.
As Aristotle put it, one soul, two bodies.
Yeah.
So that's now yourself has expanded.
You could have
Yep.
quoted the Torah, "V'yu lebasar echad," but you chose to go with Aristotle. I'm just pointing it out. Go ahead.
The Rambam quotes Aristotle, so I'm okay with
Okay,
it.
fine. All
In
right.
this
All right.
particular case, he quotes him.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so the when you have a child, so the child yourself has now expanded to include your children. He says
Yeah.
a person on a more sophisticated level,
Nice.
his
Nice.
understanding of self includes his community,
Nice.
the whole
Nice.
Jewish people.
Yeah.
He says on a more sophisticated, refined level includes all of humanity.
Right. So as long as they're your friend, it's not going to be possible. But if they're not your friend, if they're you,
Part of me. Yeah.
then it's not just possible. It's
And Rav Dessler gives a strategy to achieve this. In Kuntras HaChesed, Rav Dessler's yahrzeit was yesterday, wasn't it?
either yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, I'm still
Yeah.
convinced it was
Yeah.
Rav Lopi in that story, but okay.
Nah, it
Um,
was Riv Dessler. I remember anyways, go ahead. Yeah.
okay. In any
Yeah.
case, Rav Dessler, in his Kuntras HaChesed, his Kuntras pamphlet discussion of
Yeah.
kindness, he says that the strategy, the way to unite yourself with the other, is by giving to the other. Because when I've invested myself in the other, there's a bit of me in that
I see
in the
myself in
other.
the other. Right.
So that's kamocha. He becomes kamocha. She becomes
Nice.
kamocha. So
Right.
when I've that's part of your project. When I'm
Right.
building a bridge and investing in the other person and we're investing in each other,
Right.
then we're becoming one.
And something like bringing them a gift, like let's say it was a neighbor, bringing them a gift or something, because it involves giving is it would be a smart strategy to begin building the bridge. And also finding a way to give would be a smart strategy when you're trying to heal a rift that
100%.
you have with somebody else. Yeah. Yeah.
And imra'iv sonecha ha'achileo lechem, as King Solomon said, if your enemy is right hungry, give him food. You know, but so having said all of that, we have
Yeah.
a strange verse pasuk in the Torah. The Torah tells us in Shmot 23 that kitire chamor son acha, when you see the donkey of your enemy, roivetz tachas masoi, crushed under its burden. It says, do not refrain from helping. You shall help that person load up his donkey. So it is type of interesting that we've got this verse that says, help the person you hate. And the Gemara says, not only that, the Gemara says in Bava Metzia, Lamed base 32. So the Gemara says that, let's say you've got, there's two mitzvahs. There's a mitzvah of purikat to help unload a donkey and to help load the donkey. Now, when you're
Yeah.
unloading the donkey, I think that's type of like a double whammy because you're helping your friend, you're also helping the donkey. You're
Right.
alleviating its pain.
Yeah.
When you load up the donkey, I think you're only doing a favor to your friend. The donkey is not Eeyore, another schlepping of a package, and not, yeah, the whole works. Yeah, you can see Eeyore's
Yes.
attitude to that. Really, mitzvah of Ta'ina, loading more on the donkey. Right.
There
Anyway,
are other mitzvahs, you know. There are other
exactly.
mitzvahs available.
So anyway, so the Gemara says your enemy needs his donkey loaded, and your friend, Oihev, your friend needs his donkey unloaded. You should actually load the donkey of your enemy before you load the donkey of your friend.
Unload. Did you say
Unload,
unload your
sorry,
friend?
unload the donkey of your friend. Yeah,
Now there, even though the animal's suffering, so you have your animal suffering over there, so the animal suffering doesn't have priority over
correct. Over the fact that I'm
over.
helping my enemy.
Yes.
And the Gemara says why? Why is it so important? Kedei lakuf es yitzro. In order to overcome your evil inclination. Very nice. Which is like, by the way, this strategy, by giving to him,
Yeah.
I'm going to hate
Yeah.
him less. Okay.
Yeah.
But now Tosfos throws what's the term?
Something in the
In the
works.
works. Yeah.
Yeah. A
A
wrench.
wrench. throws a wrench in the works. Is that right? I wouldn't throw a wrench in, but okay.
Somebody is shouting at their podcast right now. There's people shouting because they know the word.
Yeah, we can't hear,
By the way,
guys. We
I know.
cannot
And
hear.
by the way, this is a phenomena that I've noticed. I wonder if it's been studied. As I'm forgetting more and more, especially like names and things like that, I find that if I'm with friends and I can't remember the name, the other person also can't remember the name. Or let's say, or the other way around, if somebody can't remember, a phrase or something like that, then I can't remember the phrase. I wonder if there's some kind of issue about association because I have been paying attention. It happens quite a bit. Why is it that we're both forgetting the same thing? How did that happen?
That's weird. It's
Yeah.
weird.
So I'm thinking there's something there. And
That
there's probably somebody
could
shouting
be.
that at
I
their
I
podcast
got to
right
ask
now.
my wife if
Yeah.
there's some psychological
There you go.
explanation. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So Tosfos, throwing a wrench or a hammer or an electric drill or chainsaw into the works, he
Yes.
asks that the Gemara, he quotes a Gemara in Psachim, Kuf Yud Gimel 113. The Gemara says, what do you mean the donkey of your enemy? If it's referring to a fellow Jew, which seems to be in context, then how do you call him sonacha? Is there not a prohibition against hating him?
How did it ever come about
What?
that you
Yeah,
hate this
exactly.
person? Yeah.
So the Gemara says, it's talking about a very specific individual. It's a guy who transgressed a serious, serious crime. It's talking about sexual immorality. You told him, don't do that, right? You're the witness to the fact that he did this terrible, terrible sin and crime. You were not able to stop him. He basically thumbed his nose at you and said, go jump in the lake, right? So it says such a person, the Gemara says, you can hate him. Because I can't do anything about it. I can't go to the Beis Din, to the court, because I'm just my word against his, one witness. I can't tell people about it, same reasons, just lashon hara, etc. So all I can do is harbor enmity towards him. That's the type of person we're talking about.
So now does he limit it specifically to sexual crimes, or would it apply to serious crimes across the board?
It's unclear, but it sounds like any prohibition, any serious prohibition. It's not clear.
Because if that's left up to me to decide, which it sounds like it is, I don't have to go to a committee to find out, does he fit in this category?
Right.
It's left to me to decide. I would say it's a little bit scary that you have people trying to determine if this other person is somebody that they should hate.
We'll discuss that. That is discussed, the Chazon Ish, extensively.
Okay.
But the Gemara does say, it's talking about Dvar Erva, which is a sexual crime.
Okay.
Whether it's that and everything equivalent, or whether specifically that, it doesn't seem logical that it's only that. It would seem to be anything of a serious nature. Either way, so Tosfos says, well, according to the Gemara in Psachim, Kuf Yud Gimel, that the enemy here is someone you're allowed to hate. How does the Gemara in Bava Metzia make sense when it says, help him first to overcome your evil inclination? What evil inclination? I'm allowed to hate the guy. It's a question Tosfos asked both in Bava Metzia and in Psachim. Very interesting question. So hopefully everyone's getting the question. I'm looking at your faces. I actually can't see anyone, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. So in that case, Tosfos answers, they answer the following. Kavan Shu Sono, if he hates this guy, his friend is going to hate him as well, because it says in Mishlei, like water reflects the face of one person, so the heart reflects what the other person's feeling. I look into water, I see my face. So if I have hatred towards this guy, he's going to hate me.
Yeah. You feel it. You do. When you walk into a room and there's somebody who hates you in that room, you feel it. You feel it.
Yeah.
Not could be.
I don't know. Only if they look at me. I don't know if they're just in the room. I don't know.
No. I
don't have that.
I've watched you. I've watched you when this happens, even if you're facing the other direction.
I contest that.
No, but I feel it. If I'm in a room with somebody who I know has strong dislike for me, I'm feeling it, and it's very hard to not feel it in kind.
Interesting. Okay. So in any way, Tosfos then says that ba'im mitoch kach lidei sina gemura. As a result of this mutual hatred, it will come to sina gemura, absolute hatred, and there shayach kfiyasiyata. There you have to overcome that. So Tosfos, they seem to be saying the following: there's a certain type of hatred which is okay. If I refrain from helping this guy, if I help the guy I liked before this guy, then that hatred, which is okay, is going to become complete hatred, which is not okay.
So this goes
Tosfos
back to
doesn't
that
explain what
scale
is
of dislike to
exactly what
hatred.
there's a sheer
Like,
of hatred.
right,
How much
right,
hatred is okay? How much is not okay?
right.
Very strange.
Yeah,
It's hard to know what that means. So my chavrusa, Moshe Newman, and we asked,
a very fine gentleman.
wonderful guy.
He should live long and in good health.
I mean, and excellent, big time chacham, and used to be a great athlete. I don't know if he still is, but anyway. So
Did you
we
ever
asked
play
Rabbi
squash?
what
Did you ever play
we
squash
played
with him?
squash. We used to play squash together. Yeah. We asked Rav Moshe Shapiro, what is the meaning of Tosfos? And Rav Moshe pointed us at a Tanya, Perek Lamed Beis, chapter 32 of the Tanya.
Lathe.
Yes. And his yahrzeit also around now-ish, isn't it? Around this month, I think. Anyway, so the Tanya says the following. The Tanya says, even though the Gemara says that if you saw someone do some serious sin, it's okay to hate him. He says, but it's interesting. He says, he quotes the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says, you should be a student of Aaron. Oyev Shalom, love peace. Roidev Shalom, pursue peace. Oyev Esabrius, love people. Umakarvan LaTorah, bring them close to Torah. So Tanya points out, it says love people. But the word used in the Mishnah is Oyev Esha Brios. How would you translate Brios?
Creations.
Yeah, creatures. You should love creatures and bring them close to Torah. Now, normally, if you and I would say creature, we'd be referring to a lizard, right? Or, right, I don't know, a Komodo dragon, that's a creature, right? Referring to a fellow human being as a creature seems to me
you could say creation.
Insulting. Okay, it's still okay. You're looking at someone's resume, and on their resume, they've written, right?
Created by God.
Created by God. That's all. That's the only thing. Now,
I think you should put that from now on.
You would not. Would you go?
I might do that.
Would you set him up with your daughter, granddaughter? I don't know. I don't think so. I'd want more than just created by God.
That's pretty big.
Mole rats are also created by God.
Yes, but if you think about it, it's still stupendous.
Yeah,
still amazing.
Giant Japanese sea slugs are also created by God. Right, this is all you can say about. So the Tanya says it's talking about people that the best you can say about them is they're created by God. It's all you can. It's the only compliment you can give them, and even a person like that you're supposed to love and bring them close to Torah. That's the Tanya. It's a great deal. It's fantastic deduction because it doesn't say love your fellow Jew and bring him close to Torah. It doesn't say love your friend, bring him closer. It says love creatures and bring them close. So he says it must be people who all you can say is he's a creature. He says even someone like that, you have to draw him close with cables of love, and hopefully you can bring him close to Torah and bechevlei avoisos ahava, with cables of love. And
somebody should write a book called Avosos Ahava.
Well, Rabbi Newman and I wrote a sefer, Avosos Ahava, Cables of Love. And the title is based on this Tanya and on the Chazon Ish. But yeah, cables of love. And he says, now, what about someone who you already rebuked and he still keeps going on the sin? And, he says, the truth is, even someone like that, where the Gemara says there is hatred, he says it's both hatred and love simultaneously. He says that the way he puts it is, he says this: "Stehen hein emes." Both hate and love are both true. Sina mitzad hara shebahem, hatred because of the evil that they have in them. Ve'ava, and love mitzad bechinas hatoiv haganuz benafshan, and love because of the hidden goodness that's within them. So he says it simultaneously. So Rav Moshe Shapiro was expressing that this Tosfos that we just saw, that's what he means. What Tanya, they mean what Tanya said, what the Tanya says, i.e., if I hate the guy because of the evil within him, but I still love him because of the good within him, and I reach out and help him, I even help him before my friend, then that hatred for the evil will remain not total. Gemura means I hate the total guy. But the Tanya says, no, that's not the case. I love the good in him. I hate the bad in him. By refraining from helping him, or by helping someone else first, the hatred which was legitimate for the evil will become an all-encompassing hatred. And that's something which is unacceptable.
Right. There also, and that's absolutely fantastic. But there also, I would want to introduce the word upset or dislike, or I mean, like that I'm upset with the person, or I mean, not because the word hatred, when we think about what was the term he used, Sina Gemura, what was that term?
Sina Gemura.
Yeah.
Sina Gemura, complete
Right.
hatred.
Right. So clearly there's like a range of this. And I'm just thinking about myself, with other people. If I considered that just being disappointed, a little bit hurt or something, even that might fall into this category. If it was something that somebody did, even though I still like this person, but they've done something that hurts, and I'm thinking about it, and it hurts, and it is something that if you fan the flame of it, it could possibly lead to hatred in the future.
That's the Gemara saying, "Lakuf
Yeah.
is don't fan the
You're
flame."
nipping it in the bud.
The opposite. Yeah,
You're nipping it in the bud. So that's that feeling itself. I may not have thought of that as hatred right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
I may have just thought about just that I've got an issue with this person. It hurt. It hurt. I'm carrying around pain because of, or upset.
But even someone like that, that's what the Tanya is saying, and Rav Moshe Shapiro maintains that's what Tosfos is saying. And the Chazon Ish says just two ideas from the Chazon Ish before we move on to our next section.
Yeah.
The Chazon Ish first of all points out that that which we say hatred is only if the person has been, and this is actually from a sefer called Marganisa Tava of the Chafetz Chaim quotes this. It's the end of Avas Chesed, and he's quoting from the Maram Lublin, who says that hatred is only applicable after you've rebuked the person and he has rejected the rebuke. If he's never been rebuked for it, right, then
it's not acceptable.
He's not considered evil at this point. He's not considered a Rasha. And it's interesting, the Chafetz Chaim, the way he quotes this, has one more stage. The Chazon Ish says this as well, which is nowadays we don't know how to rebuke properly, which means you have to look at every person as pre-rebuke.
Yeah.
Meaning he has never heard appropriate rebuke. Right? Maybe if the Chafetz Chaim would have put his arm around him and spoken to him about it, he would have done tshuva. But all he's got is Becher, right? And
that's a lot. Right. A lot of people would say that's a lot.
I can't make the assumption. What do you mean? The guy came to my class and he didn't completely accept the Torah, right? He must be evil. No, I must be incompetent, right? That's the point. And that's the Chazon Ish, based on the Chafetz Chaim, based on Maram Lublin, based on earlier sources, which is hatred is only allowed after there was a rejection of rebuke. And it's only if he's heard rebuke from someone who knows how to rebuke, and we don't know how to do that nowadays.
Right. So there's really nobody you could hate.
he says the only person that you consider really a rasha to that extent is someone who are based in a duly appointed court of law, has decided, yeah, this guy is he's the real deal. Very rare to have such a situation. Very rare, right?
Doesn't the Rambam, when he's talking about the Ikrim, doesn't he say that if there's somebody who denies the Ikrim, that it's a mitzvah l'sono?
Yes, but even there, the Chazon Ish and the others would say that's only if we assume that he's heard about them in some cogent, coherent way. He's not just completed Geramus, and
Yeah.
there's a whole, of course, there's a whole discussion Tinok Shanishba, not with the Rambam and the Ravid. And then there's one more Chazon Ish, which I think is essential before we go on, which is the Chazon Ish in Yoredeya. He says, what about someone, it's on Maseches Vodazora, technically, right? But the volume is Yoredeya. But anyway, the Gemara says that Haminim v'Hamasoros, that means Jews who seduce people into idolatry, and Masoros, Jews who turn Jews over to murderous pagan regimes, are both people that in those days you could kill, dangerous to the community. So there's the Chazon Ish says something unbelievable, mind blowing. He says all that is only true back then when God's divine providence was obvious. Right, Hashgachas Hashem Geluya Lakol, divine providence was obvious to everyone. Ubeibud Rishoim Rina, and it was clear that when an evil person was eliminated, the world was a better place. He says nowadays, when we don't see divine providence with such clarity, he says any act of violence is a chilul Hashem, a desecration of the name of God. And he says, what should you do with these people instead? Tzarech lekarev oisam ba'avoisois ahava. You have to bring them close with cables of love, like the Tanya says.
Yes.
Ulaha'amidan, and to set them up, Becher and Oira, with rays of light. So that's astounding. That's like the Gemara says, kill this guy, and the Chazon Ish says, give him a hug.
Yeah.
That's quite a huge. That's a what we call a leniency. I mean, he's like the Gemara says A, he says the antithesis, anti-A, the opposite.
But it's an indication of how far we've dropped.
Yeah,
You read Adoros.
we don't know how to rebuke. We don't see divine providence.
And the fact that this person, we're assuming that the fact that this person is doing possibly terrible things is only because he doesn't see Hashem manifest in creation. So that we are in such a kind of dark place compared to where we need to be. So there is a leniency, but it's like the leniency is a commentary on the condition of society, and it's not a great commentary.
Our education. In other words, how you could have some kid. He's probably been told off by principals and teachers and parents, etc., many times. He's never actually heard rebuke in the way that it's supposed to be given. He could have heard 100 people telling him something, and he's never been rebuked the way it's supposed to be. The way it's supposed to be, and I heard this from Rabbi Riskin, who told this story over in Florida, that there was a kid in Radun, the Chafetz Chaim's yeshiva, whose father caught him smoking on Shabbos, which is prohibited, by the way, for those who... Anyway, and so he brought him to a teenager, I assume as a teenager. He brought him to the Chafetz Chaim. The kid comes out of the office after about 15 minutes. He hugs his father. He's crying. He says, never again will I smoke on Shabbos. And Rabbi Riskin said, I wish I knew what the Chafetz Chaim said to that kid. So a guy in the audience, Florida, so it's an elderly guy, says, I know what he said. He says, how do you know? He says, I was the kid.
What?
Yeah. He says, I was the kid. So he told Rabbi Riskin the following. He said, I went into the office. I sat down. The Chafetz Chaim took my hand in his hand. He said, he leaned over and he said, Shabbos, Shabbos. And he started crying, and his tears were falling on my hand as he was holding my hand, saying Shabbos and crying. He says, that's all he said to me.
Beautiful.
Now, the difference is everything in the words. Now, I mean, there are people who see someone driving on Shabbos in Israel and will say Shabbos, but they'll say Shabbos, Shabbos, and you can feel the enmity and the hatred and the
It's a
accusation
weapon.
and the
The word
etc.
Shabbos is a weapon that you're
Exactly, but
striking them with.
exactly. But when the Chafetz Chaim comes over and says Shabbos and starts crying, that's a different story.
Yeah.
That's rebuke. That's
Rabbi
rebuke.
Abraham J. Twersky has an example. When he was a kid, they used to have these itinerant rabbonim that would be traveling around the state or the country, and they'd come through Milwaukee, and so there was this one particular itinerant rabbi who was by them for Rosh Hashanah. And so it was Rosh Hashanah afternoon, after davening, after eating, and this rabbi asks him, and he's like 11 years old or something, 10 years old. He asks him, you want to play chess? So he thought to himself, it seems funny to play chess on Rosh Hashanah, but he's a rabbi. I mean, he wouldn't be asking me to do it if it's not right. So he plays chess. They play chess. So after Rosh Hashanah, he gets called into his father's study, and that's not typically a good thing to get called into his father's study.
Right.
And he said, my father was looking into a sefer, into a book, just looking into the book. And he didn't look up. He just goes, did you play chess on Rosh Hashanah? And he said it was like a dagger went into him. And the enormity of Rosh Hashanah and the silliness of chess, it was all there in that just you played chess on Rosh Hashanah. And then he said, after he let it sit there for a while, then he looked up at me and said, did you win?
That is a great story. That's great
Yeah.
parenting.
Yes.
That's actually in his book, Generation to Generation.
Yeah.
It's great. So
Yeah.
anyway, so having said that, all of the above, I would like to just a short rant.
Rant away.
Okay. When very often when someone says my fellow Jew or Yidden or something like that, what they mean is those who look and sound and dress exactly like me. Example, you look at a newspaper, a religious Orthodox newspaper, and they talk about the frum, that the religious community. I know in Melbourne, Australia, which is where I'm from. So in the Orthodox press, the only communities that they ever discuss as being frum is the Hasidish shul, Adas Yisrael, and they are frum. I do not disagree. And sometimes Lubavitch, which is massive in Australia. But they'll never feature other shuls like Mizrahi, which is the Bnei Akiva shul, where my family does. They'll never talk about Caulfield shul, which is what we would call a modern Orthodox. That's not, when you talk about the Jewish community in
How
Australia,
about a Sephardic shul?
no, also not. Right? That's not the Jewish community, right? And isn't it, I was speaking to a group of women in Lakewood. There was a women's program run by Nevei Yerushalayim called Shalheves 2 Sundays ago, whatever. So one of the things I mentioned to them was that when if I say something like, if you would ask a crowd, when does a Jew become obligated in mitzvahs? Everyone will say 13. If someone says
Or a boy.
12, if someone says
Oh,
12, just say, what are you talking about? Oh, girls.
because they're only thinking of men.
Of course. When a Rov stands up there and he says, when a Yid puts on tefillin every morning, so I said to the women, when a rabbi says that, he's only referring to half of the Jewish people. because there are half who actually don't put on tefillin every morning, right? And
Yeah.
one of the women said, "Thank you so much." But really, when people talk about they've got these right, they can't identify a Jew who's like looks different. We traveled. I remember I was in Tanzania with legacy kosher tourists, and we're in Tanzania. There's a guy there who's Yemenite origin. Right? His daughter actually goes to a high school in Israel, and he actually got certification from. They would not accept her unless he got her based in Johannesburg to certify he's Jewish, which they did.
Yeah.
So he's 100%, but he's quite black, quite dark.
Yeah.
Right? He dresses in like very like Tanzanian style,
Yeah.
and he has a shul in his house type. And so he asked people to take off their shoes because actually a lot of there's a common Yemenite custom not to wear shoes in shul.
We saw that in India,
Yeah, exactly. Right. I saw
which,
that
by
in
the way,
Tunisia.
I just want to mark an event. When we were in India,
Yeah.
that was 7.5 years ago, we
Wow.
were in India and the Daf Yomi, there was a Daf Yomi share in the morning. The Daf Yomi finished Zvachim
Oh,
and started Menachos on that trip.
really?
So this is an entire
Cycle of the Babylonian Talmud.
from that trip when we were in India, where also when you enter a shul, they ask you to take your shoes off. What do you got there?
That
There,
is a
look at
picture of you and
us.
I
That's us
on
on
an
an
elephant
elephant.
on an elephant in
We're
India.
on an elephant. Was that like the Red Fort or something like
Yes,
that?
yes, exactly.
How do
Yes.
you like that? That's cool.
Happen to
Seven and a
have
half years ago. And if
I
you
did
wanted
not
to know where Dafyomi was,
and I did not
finishing
know you would be
Zvachim.
mentioning this. So in any case, there were a couple of people on the tour, a couple of Hasidic gentlemen who said that he's not Jewish. I said, well, why do you say he's not? I said, the Din said he. He said, look at him. They couldn't, and they wouldn't take their shoes off. Well, it's like, what are we? Are Muslims? We're Muslims. They are so. Their picture of Judaism is so narrow, right? And is so like it's got to be European Williamsburg, right? Jewish food is potato kugel and pachar and chopped liver. The idea that kuba is a Jewish food, lahmanjun, right? Moroccan cigars, hamin, orissa, sahina, tibet, etc. These
Dachnun.
are jachnun. It's foreign. It's like a different. We got to overcome that. It's
My
terrible.
kids, my kids, they were initially raised in Israel. They went to Cheder in Neve Yaakov. Then they went to a Talmud Torah Sanhedrin.
Ah,
Um, and then we moved to Chicago. Now, in when we were in Israel, if they saw somebody driving on Shabbos, they said that's a goy. And so I would tell them, sometimes it's a Jew, but they just don't know better. It did not register. It did not register at all. We came to the States. So my son AY was like 10, my oldest. And I don't know, maybe 10 years later, he was shadowing a boy in a school called Hillel Torah, which is like a B'nai Akiva school, what you were describing. And he came home. This is 20 years old. He came home and he said, you're not going to believe this, but there are teachers there that are Talmidei Chachamim. It was so shocking to him. It was shocking to him.
yeah. I have a friend who went with his son to Israel. They were in, I forget which yeshiva they're at. Was it Keren B'Yavne? I forgot which yeshiva. And his son had a shaila. They were visiting,
Yeah.
and very frum, Haredi. And he said, ask the Rosh Yeshiva. He says, Abba, he's wearing a sweater. He says, he's a big Talmud Chacham. Ask him the question. But he's wearing a sweater. It's like we cannot, and it is unfortunate, very unfortunate. But we have to have a sense of recognition of the Jewishness of other Jews,
Yes.
and of our common unity. I believe
Yes.
one of my sons told me, he says his Miluim unit, his Army Reserve unit in Israel,
Yeah.
there's like a CEO of a high tech firm. There's one or two construction guys. There are secular, left wing secular. There are right wing Orthodox. Right there, the group, it could not get more diverse, and they operate as a single unit because they have a common goal. They are supporting and each other, right, and will give their lives for each other. And they are completely different,
Yeah.
right? There's a great lesson we can learn, right, from in the IDF. You got these reserve units that are composed of a whole range of people, very, very different, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I the the Yom Kippur before October 7th. Uh, so there was a terrible story about this group that were davening outside in Tel Aviv, and there
Oh
was
yes,
another group that broke, felt like because they had separate, they were
yes.
davening with a mechitza out in public, and these people already knew it was a sensitive thing, but anyways, it was like I think somebody drove in with like a scooter and stuff, and they were knocking Sidurim on the ground, and afterwards, like after Yom Kippur, I was like, it reminded me of after Yitzhak Rabin, like right after Yitzhak Rabin was shot, the depth of what was going on. And I made, and I continue to do this, I made myself a commitment that I'm going to repeat over and over, and I'm going to try to live this, and it's going to be work, but I'm going to try to live this, that there is no them. There is only us. That there you can't, there's no other Jew. It doesn't matter what you think about that Jew. He is not them or she is not them, and you can't live without them. We all are all necessary. Even somebody who's writing, even somebody who's standing at a Palestinian march at Columbia University, or somebody like that. And that's the hardest, those are amongst the hardest ones for me. I practice it. I like look at
That's a
it and
challenge.
I
That is a
say, there
challenge.
is no them. There is no them. There is only us. That we need to commit to this because we see the results of what happened, the terrible, terrible results. Hamas mentioned that their timing was in great part due to the fact that they
Yeah.
saw the divide,
Hmm.
and they thought we wouldn't be able to get it together to fight them.
And the miracle of how Jews all over Israel and
Yes,
all over the
yes,
world came
yes,
together
yes.
to defend each other.
But we can't
It's
just have
incredible.
those moments.
Yeah.
We have to. It's like sometimes you have you read a Litzor Aliyah because this is hopefully that we there is no them.
Hmm.
There is only
There's a
us.
certain humility that we have to have also to recognize that who there's an amazing Mesher Chochma of Meir Simcha Dvinsk. He points out two parallel verses. There are two different versions. In it, one it says, "Kitir chamor sonacha," the donkey of your enemy that we just discussed. But he says later in Devarim, there's a parallel verse that it says achicha. He says, what happened? He says, you know what happened in between? It says, your brother. He says, what happened in between was we worshiped the golden calf. He said, beforehand, you could have said, look, this guy is, he's evil, he does this, he does that. He says, once we did the golden calf, we're all in the same boat. No one can look at anyone else and say, I'm good. He is. He says, oh, no, no. He says, we're all brothers because we all are equally guilty
The
right?
humble
And
path.
no one can
Yeah.
look at themselves and
Yeah.
say, I'm awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, with the exception of the two of us,
Right.
but all the rest of you,
Mostly you.
yeah,
I am it mostly you.
but
Yeah.
right. But yeah, we can't do that, and I think it's a matter of survival. It's a matter. It's aside from the
Yeah.
mitzvah and everything. It's a
Yeah.
matter of survival.
100%.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you, and folks out there who are listening, who are watching, please give a like and share this with other people, and tell people about it. It is on Spotify, it's on YouTube, it's on Apple, and it also is on Torah Anytime.
And somebody told Rabbi Becher, somebody told Mordechai that he's at Lakewood. He learns in Lakewood, and that in Lakewood they don't use the internet, but somebody downloads it and then shares it amongst people.
Which we are overjoyed.
We're grateful, very grateful that that happens.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all for watching. Give us a like, give us a share, tell your friends. If you don't like it, tell your enemies, right? And thank you very much.
Be well.